favorite punctuation mark. All right, so most of you guys already know I'm Ian Furr. I'm a third-year computing security student. I am the vice president at Nextop. Hey, we meet in SysLab every other Tuesday at the even weeks at 6 o'clock. Security and systems administration stuff. I get a lot of that experience through Nextop, so great time. I had a co-op last. I had a co-op. Talk to me about it later if you're interested. And that's a picture of me slacklining. So what is imposter syndrome? It is a lot of things, but it's been defined as a psychological pattern in which an individual doubts their accomplishments and has a persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. So with different, it takes a lot of different forms, and there are some things that come out as patterns across a lot of the times people say that they have imposter syndrome, and some of these are the belief that you're somewhere you're not qualified to be. So you've gotten a job that you have no business being in, where in real life you probably do, and there's a reason you're there. It's the fear that once your skills are exhausted, your coworkers or your boss or your friends are going to figure out that you're a complete fraud and that you've been a sham the whole time. And the feeling that your success is due to your luck and not your skill. So that's goes hand in hand with or working hard to the point where you feel like one time you got lucky and worked hard enough that you finally made it this one time. Never going to happen again. And this can compound and eventually result in anxiety, stress, and depression. And these aren't real things that you want to have when you're building a career off of some place that you should be. So this all kind of leads into a self-perpetuating cycle where people typically have two reactions when they get assigned something, and it's either to over-prepare and just spend a lot of time on or and try and rush something really, really quickly by the hair and finally finished it. And both of these lead to a brief feeling of happiness and accomplishment that you actually got something done and that you did whatever you were trying to do. But then they lead to either absolute doubt that you really could have done it if you had put the right amount of time into it along the way, or just absolute nightmares. So as this fades out and as these feelings fade out, the individual that's suffering from it might discount any positive feedback that they get, and this just kind of builds. So if you complete a project and one of your coworkers says, hey, great job, good work, syndrome, you're going to say, no, I just got really lucky, and that's what always happens to me. So there are a bunch of different types of imposter syndrome that have been kind of identified as people have done more research into it. We typically have the perfectionist, where people set excessively high goals and then they try really hard to meet them, and if they can't, then they blame themselves for just not having the skill set to do it. And it's really because they set just an absolutely high goal nobody in their right mind would have been able to meet. So they really like to be in control of the situation and have everything down pat, and they're something that they find satisfying. They want to keep going for more and more and more, and they don't stop ever. And eventually it leads to a lot of people burning out. We also have the Superman/Superwoman, where you feel like you're a fake in a crowd full of successful people. So you're absolutely alone and isolated in the fact that everybody around you knows what's going on and knows what they're doing. And you're sitting there going, I have no idea what's going on, and I don't know where to start. So this pushes them to work harder and harder and try and do all the things to get as much exposure to different environments as they can and get out of that feeling of being a fake. And some people end up staying later and later at like a job or something like that, where even if they don't have to, they're going to stay there and either procrastinate on whatever they're doing or just sit there and do nothing, just to sit there. Then we've got the natural genius, who judges their success based on lack of ability to actually do it, and they have that ability because of their hard work. And they are typically thinking that if you have to work really hard on something, don't. And that first time, then they panic. At all. That last one, the rugged individualist, where similarly isolated, ask for help, then weak and where they are. Absolutely on you. And then that leaves us with the expert, where there's so really lucky you realize no idea what's going on and you don't feel like you're a fit, even though you're absolutely qualified and you have the necessary skills. This leads them to fear that they're going to be exposed as unknowledgeable or inexperienced, and eventually suffer consequences. So this means that they typically avoid everything, or avoid a lot of things. Criteria. And dive into something that's related to the work and just try and learn everything they can about it and never actually get on to do it. So, stuff about me where I've seen imposter theory in my own life. A couple weeks ago, I was at Guardians and I was helping a bunch of freshmen out, and then I realized I have no idea what I'm doing, but they seem to be taking what I'm saying to heart and doing it, and they seem to be doing okay. And somehow it worked out. I was the one that developed the hard challenge for last week. So if you guys spent spent a lot of time on that and hated yourselves for it, yeah, that was my fault. So sorry. And I'm a mentor for RITSEC, if my freshmen ever get back to me. We'll see. Sometimes I'm like, well, I have no qualifications for this other than the fact that I'm here. I showed up and I said yes. So that's a lot of it, is being able to dive into something and going for it. I'm also a member of the Next Top e-board, and with that, I was at NSIC and went to a couple meetings, and I realized, hey, this is kind of cool. I kind of like this. And Joe was like, hey, you should come out and be e-board. I said, okay. I'm not real great at configuring systems, but we've got a long semester ahead of us. So I was also approached a couple times to come and try out for things like CPTC and CCDC. I have no set to be here. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what's going on. And that's leading into stuff like the weekly challenges, where I've gone, but then like, hey, what am I doing? What's going on? I have no idea. And it's kind of, and for me, that really, last year, before I was able to actually get really involved in the clubs and stuff, I didn't like what I was doing in the cybersecurity program, had no idea what I was going to do with it. And then I started getting involved and realized stuff that's really cool that I can dive into. And it kind of brought me back out of the feeling that I don't and that I don't, which I'll get into a little bit in a sec. I'm also presented here a couple times with no qualifications really, like with Scott a couple weeks ago. And you guys, for some reason, let me do this presentation. So 77% of men and 84% of women report that they, for either some or all of the symptoms that typically come with imposter syndrome. And this is a really, pretty much everybody that you're going to talk to has seen it in some form or another. And it means that you're not alone if you're thinking this. Through talking to people in this presentation, been through that, that makes a whole lot of sense. And it was surprisingly more common than I had thought going to set this up. So there's a lot of different things that you can do to actually get out of imposter syndrome, and a lot of it comes down to whatever's going to work for you. I could sit here and tell you 100 different things, and you could try all 100 of them, and in the end, you might go, yeah, nothing worked. And that's do exactly what you know. Ones are turning a mistake into a learning opportunities. Failure define you. You've got to take lessons for something and use those to actually go forward. When it comes back up the second time around, you're going to be more prepared for it, and you're going to know exactly what you need to do through it. You've got to take chances. I did coming up and doing this presentation. If you don't take chances, you're never going to find comfort zone. It might not end well every time, but the important part is learning about it. Validation is something that you have to be. You got to take that. If they say great job, then you need to actually welcome that and realize that, hey, maybe I'm not such bad at this, or maybe I'm doing an okay job at something. That goes into welcoming constructive criticism. You've got to take what people tell you and use just like mistakes into learning opportunities. And out to the person next to you and go, hey. And all I had. Thank you, guys. Any questions at all? Joe?
Thanks for giving this presentation. I've had like a related presentation kicking around in the back of my head for the last couple of weeks, but it's kind of difficult to be vulnerable in front of a lot of people, and it's very easy in our community to assume that people who are older than you, or potentially have more experience than you, are like gods. They hold up and they're perfect. Everyone's a human being, and a lot of people. I don't think that gets called out enough, and I appreciate you doing that.
Thank you.
I'm going to say something. Just to play off of what Joe just said, I was approached last year to be tech lead, and I thought I was not qualified in a technical aspect to be good enough to be tech lead. So trust me, every single person will experience this at some point.
And if you do, like, come talk to multiple people. We've all been there. Like, come talk to us. We'd love to talk to you.
Yeah.
I was one of the technical, or Scott, my first response when they asked me was, why?
I think that's what I said too.
Yeah.
I know I can say firsthand experience. When I first came here, I felt dumb. This sounds super smart. I thought that's really advanced stuff. After first time giving a presentation for RITSEC, I quickly realized that you know, an hour of just reading and research and then all kinds of big words can make it sound you know, really different looking at that hour and like,
Yeah.
you know,